went from a bit part in an unknown game.
We never expected that Mario would be our icon back then. It was just Jumpman.
To one of the most recognized faces in the world.
We instantly fell in love with Mario, the character.
Along the way, he helped save an industry.
The time was ripe for a new video game console, and the time was ready for a new hero.
And all of a sudden, video games were back on top, and it's all thanks to Mario Brothers.
And changed the way we play.
That's the brilliance of the whole Mario series, is that it was this gameplay, and that's something Miyamoto is famous for.
A lot of the games just look like things that children do.
You know, developers still point to it as one of the best games of all time.
This is the story of Mario. Here we go! In 1980, Nintendo, a Japanese toy manufacturer, is trying to break into the already crowded American arcade market.
Nintendo wanted a piece of that pie, and so they developed a game called Radar Scope, an arcade game. They released it to test audiences, and people hated it. Radar Scope was just not good. They had a bomb on their hands.
Nintendo turns to a young staff artist to transform the bomb into a hit.
Hiroshi Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo Japan, got this young Shigeru Miyamoto and said, hey, make a game. And he hadn't made a game before, so this was sort of a gamble.
I mean, even when I first entered the company, it was really my goal to design and ultimately sell these products, really toys that I was interested in.
But Miyamoto seemed creative, and Yamauchi thought he might be up to the task. And well, you know, as it turned out, he was very up to the task.
The artist, a 28-year-old Shigeru Miyamoto, had never created a game before. Eager to learn, he studies the schematics and meets with engineers and programmers.
Miyamoto did exactly that. He saved it by saying, it's so bad, we can't even use it, toss it out. We're going to use the same technology to create something new.
But he needs a story.
Actually, with Donkey Kong, we began development on that game, originally with the idea of using Popeye in it.
But because of extended contract negotiations, the sailor is left at sea.
Had they used Popeye, they would have created one of the early licensed games. And of course, the trouble with a license is that, you know, you have it for this game, but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
And probably Popeye wouldn't have the same appeal, you know, 20 years later as Mario does. So in the end, I think it worked out for Nintendo. It could be the best thing that ever happened to him.
So Miyamoto decides instead on a stubborn gorilla who breaks free from his cage and kidnaps his keeper's girlfriend. The goofy carpenter who has to rescue the girl is a little man with a big nose and an even bigger heart, named Jumpman. Because of the restrictions of technology, Miyamoto has to get creative with his character design.
And Jumpman, you know, is this tiny little sprite with a mustache and a hat and overalls, and we know him well today, but the only reason why he looked like that back then was because of the limitations of the hardware. Without a mustache, the Mario sprite would have looked really weird because you wouldn't be able to see the nose in the face. So there's your reason why the guy has a mustache. Hair would look really weird, so they decided, hey, let's give him a hat. The reason Mario had overalls on was because without the overalls, the whole like walking thing would have looked really bad. So there you go, there's the birth of a cultural icon.
In 1981, the finished arcade game ships to America, where a certain resemblance is noticed.
And common lore has it that that name is based on the landlord of the Nintendo offices in New York.
The landlord's named Mario Segale, and so Jumpman is named Mario. Despite the unusual story and characters, players quickly learn to love the game.
It did very well, and it started, you know, more and more people were playing, and quickly we realized in America that we had a hit.
Before you knew it, Donkey Kong was everywhere.
Really what it was jumping over the barrels. And who could forget jumping over the barrels and climbing up the ladders? It was such a simple gameplay mechanism and yet so memorable and so replayable.
Donkey Kong is a very skill-based game. You think it's a simplistic game, you think it's a cutesy game, you think it's a girl's game, but it's not. People are still trying to boost up their scores to this day.
Nintendo ships over 60,000 Donkey Kong arcade cabinets to locations around the country. The game quickly joins the pantheon of hit arcade titles like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Asteroids.
Everyone remembers playing Donkey Kong in the arcade. It's fun. It's still a fun game. And it reminds you that the early games, as far as minimal as they were, They knew what was going on. It's just one of the classics.
それぞれにあるですね、ドンキーコング
To me, Donkey Kong holds a very precious place for me because that was really the first time where I was recognized for my work in game design. I mean, up to that point, video games had been designed mostly by technical people, and it was really the first time that a designer had actually created a game and been recognized for that work.
After his uncredited success in Donkey Kong, Mario takes his first starring role in Mario Brothers, released for the arcades. Along the way, Mario's character is fleshed out a little more.
Mario kind of went from just Jumpman, this semi-generic-looking character, to kind of a living, breathing character. He was Mario now. And he was a plumber, and he had a brother named Luigi. And the two of them could go through this little game universe and, you know, tear it up. It was cool. Kind of gave way to the franchise.
Gamers are impressed with the new ways to play.
I was attracted to the game when it first came out in the arcade simply because of that whole versus co-op element that we hadn't seen very often.
The game becomes a hit for Nintendo, and Mario becomes a celebrity.
The whole Mario name became a household name. Mom knew that you were playing Mario, whereas, you know, that other game was that shooting game with the stupid spaceships, or, you know, the one with the two Western heroes.
Nintendo had succeeded more than anyone could have hoped, but things were about to get a little more super. By 1984, Nintendo has established a strong presence in the arcade and is eager to do the same in the living room. However, after the terrible losses faced by companies like Atari a year earlier, people began to think of video games as simply a passing fad.
I think a lot of people just lost interest. The games were so generic, there was so much bad stuff out there, they didn't want to do it. So in comes Nintendo, this Japanese newcomer, saying we're going to make a new console. And, you know, what a gutsy move at the time. The idea to bring out a console was just, you know, dumbfounded many people.
Nintendo has already created the Famicom, or Family Computer, a console that is sweeping through Japan. But they know the only way to convince toy stores in America to carry it is to create a hit game. Work begins immediately on a game to maximize the technology.
Well, yeah, it is true that we do have these kind of closets in Japan with sliding doors, and behind the doors it is very dark. And I remember as a child being kind of afraid of that darkness, or even going into the mountains and playing in the mountains as a kid and finding caves and whatnot. And that sort of exploration, too, really lingered in my memory. And so later on in life, when I did start making video games, it kind of came back into play in my imagination. And so Mario then became really the perfect game for kind of this jumping around and active expression, and just the motion on screen really became the best game for that type of action.
Super Mario Brothers also introduces a storyline and characters that are familiar to all gamers.
You have two brothers out to save the girl. You know, in the original game it was Pauline, later it's Princess Peach. And you have a bad guy, and it's usually Bowser, who kidnaps the girl, and you gotta go to the end of the level, and it's usually on the right side, and get the girl.
The game arrives with Nintendo's new system, the NES, just in time for Christmas, into an uncertain marketplace.
There's a lot of product out there. It wasn't selling. Retailers didn't want to, you know, get into video games anymore. And then here was this little Nintendo Entertainment System coming over from Japan, and this character, Mario, you know, what was this about? And here was a game that featured a character. It was different. It was this adventure game, something people hadn't seen before.
The time was right for a new video game console, and the time was ready for a new hero in video games, and there he was, Mario.
It was kind of poppy and quirky. It was just definitely cool. It's something that is just burned into gamers' brains. I mean, you know, it's like you could find, you know, 50 years from now, play the dungeon theme. Or play the above ground theme. And it's like they'll know exactly what you're playing. You know, they'll just recognize it instantly.
The preponderance of secrets was just amazing. You look forward to something new every time you played it because you'd find a cool new pipe you could go down. Or like, oh, a one-up was there, I did not know that. And it's just a really cool learning experience, and it's just fun all around.
And I think that's the brilliance of the whole Mario series, is that it was this gameplay. I mean, it was about the gameplay, and that's, you know, something Miyamoto is famous for. Making it about the gameplay, starting with the gameplay and letting everything follow from that.
Fun. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. He somehow knows how to make a game with really tight controls, very compelling to play, challenging enough that you're going to be playing it for a while, and just cute enough and just cool enough to pull in every audience.
Word spreads fast, and the game soon becomes a must-have toy for kids everywhere.
And then all of a sudden, video games were back on top, and it's all thanks to Mario Brothers. It went on to be, you know, probably the top-selling video game of all time.
With 40 million copies of his game reaching his fans, Mario proves he is as much a hit in the living room as he is in the arcade. But fans will have to wait for a sequel.
There was actually a sequel to Super Mario Brothers, but it only came out in Japan. Super Mario Brothers 2 is basically a clone of the first game. It looks very similar, but it was so tough that Nintendo was worried that American gamers would just not like it.
The next Mario game to come to America really isn't a Mario game at all.
Instead, what we got in the US was a Super Mario Brothers 2 that was known in Japan as Doki Doki Panic. So Nintendo said, oh, why don't we take that game, put our Mario characters in it, because nobody cares about these Doki Doki characters, and bring that to the US.
No one seems to mind the differences. The sequel quickly sells 10 million copies. Mario Mania is in full effect. Fans eagerly await the third installment of the series.
By the time Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, Mario was a full-blown superstar mascot for Nintendo. Everybody knew him and loved him. You could turn on the TV and see Mario. You could go to the movies and see him in Wizard. He was everywhere, basically. The market was saturated with Mario.
The game arrives in stores on February 12, 1990, and once again, fans love it.
It was just a huge expansion on the concept of the original Mario. Everything was bigger, badder, better. The scope was immense. It was 3 megabits, which was like 12 times as big.
Actually, Super Mario Bros. 3 was the biggest selling game of all. That's when you really knew Nintendo was here to stay. They were in the game. For me, that game was just really deep, polished, felt great. Whether it was pure platforming or you flying around with a raccoon tail. I mean, there's so much to do and love about that game.
Despite a 6-year-old console system, Super Mario Bros. 3 sells 18 million copies, more than any other single game.
It was the biggest thing in the industry, by far. Every company wanted to have a Mario. And you saw competitors bringing out wannabe mascots too, so it was cool.
Like Sonic from Sega.
Back then, Sonic was gaining in popularity. He was huge. He's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Sega was promoting the heck out of him and making him into this kind of cooler, hipper character. So yeah, there was a time there when you kind of wondered, would Sonic replace Mario?
And Nintendo needed something new, and they needed it badly. So the Genesis came out first, and it was a big leap over the NES, and then Nintendo followed suit with the machine they were developing, the Super Nintendo. Sega really capitalized on that whole, speed feel and said, this guy is much faster than Mario. Mario's the old man. And it worked. In the US, the Genesis outsold the Super Nintendo, which was amazing, based on the success of games like Sonic, but also because Sega was able to predict the market. They said, gamers are getting older, they want to play something different. Mario didn't evolve. So I don't think it's because the guys at Nintendo weren't smart enough to predict the trends. I think they were bucking it. They didn't want Mario to become a grown-up character. They wanted people who are grown-ups to feel like they were kids when they played. They wanted to make it games. They wanted to make it fun.
Nintendo prepares to retake their lead by releasing a new system. Once again, they gamble the company's future on the courageous Italian. By 1996, Mario has become a full-blown celebrity, having appeared in films, on television, as well as in the best-selling games of all time. However, Nintendo is getting ready to launch a new system, this time facing heavy competition.
Sony had already come to market with this cool, kind of hip PS1 platform. And it surprised everybody. It was successful. And everyone was skeptical of Nintendo's machine.
They placed all their bets on Miyamoto. They knew when a new platform comes out, we have to have Miyamoto create the flagship title. And even though Mario's popularity was kind of waning in the wake of upcoming characters like Sonic and all the sports games, not only did Nintendo gamble by taking an established 2D character and making him 3D, but they also said, you know what, this is the biggest thing we have. If anybody can pull this off, it's Miyamoto and it's Mario.
Working closely with the developers, Miyamoto and his team begin to explore uncharted territory. When Mario 64 is released on September 26, 1996, the experiment pays off.
If Super Mario World was an evolution of the first Super Mario Brothers game, here's the game that is, you know, the same theme but really a revolution of it all. They took the whole concept and they made it something so different that people were instantly just flabbergasted at, you know, is this Mario? And then they played it and they're like, oh my god, it is! Super Mario 64 was just an amazing game and is still to this date. If you plop it back in, just play it for 20 minutes, you just get addicted to running around, and I don't know what it is. The way the character feels, the weight on the lawn and climbing on the trees and all that, it just works so perfectly and flows so nicely.
It was just groundbreaking. I mean, in all senses of the term. It was a real 3D world. You could go anywhere. And it set the stage for every 3D game world that we've seen since. You know, Miyamoto, the creator of that game, just revolutionary as far as his thoughts on game design, fun, immersion.
And it was huge. It was like a shockwave. It overtook everybody. And it proved that Nintendo knew its stuff, you know. No one could compete with that. Just the polish and the way in which they brought Mario into the 3D realm, the control, the world design, you know, the level design. They'd retain these classic kind of 2D feeling platformer levels and purely 3D worlds. And like they've done it in a way that nobody else could even conceive of it. It was such a success that even today Mario's looked back upon as, you know, this groundbreaking platformer in 3D. You know, developers still point to it as one of the best games of all time.
Super Mario 64 is a blockbuster, selling over 9 million copies and ensuring a healthy life for the Nintendo 64. Over the next 5 years, Mario appears in numerous games on the system, helping to establish new franchises and genres for Nintendo, like Mario Party.
Ready? Go!
And Smash Brothers. In November of 2001, Nintendo releases its next console, the GameCube. For the first time, there is no Mario game at launch. But fans would not have to wait long. On August 26, 2002, the Red Cap returns in
Super Mario Sunshine!
I hope you're all looking forward to Mario's latest adventure.
You know, by the time Super Mario Sunshine came out, you've seen from developers games that are doing this type of thing. And they're doing them well. So Nintendo couldn't really just shock everybody again. They had to just come with a solid title. And I think Super Mario Sunshine is a solid title.
Although it is unable to top the sales of its predecessors, Super Mario Sunshine is critically acclaimed, winning numerous awards. But after over 2 decades of gaming, how will Mario survive?
There's so many characters out there, so many mascots and cooler characters vying for people's attention that Mario is often forgotten. But as far as gameplay goes, Mario is still king.
I think Nintendo's insistence that they keep Mario pure and kind of a mascot that appeals to all ages, you know, has kind of helped the company over the years because Mario's become this family-branded thing, and you know, parents can go into a shop and pick up a Mario game, and they know that they're going to have something healthy for their kids. It's not going to be packed full of blood and guts or whatever.
Mario is really a gaming icon because he's been around so long. As a character, this guy, you know, has been around longer than anyone else. Unless you count the square pong ball, you know, I remember that one. Or the little triangle asteroid ship. As a character, Mario is really, you know, has so much longevity because he's instantly memorable, and we've seen him for such a long time.
With 6 of the 10 all-time best-selling games and over 20 years of innovations, Mario's effect on the world of gaming is undeniable.
Just like Citizen Kane, it's really the archetype for a really good movie, and directors will always refer back to it. Mario is the one 3D game that people will refer back to.
So I think all around the industry, whether people are playing Nintendo games now or have played them in the past, that be it, you know, consumers or the people making the games, I think you're going to find Nintendo influence everywhere.
Even his creator still sees him as something special.
When people ask me to draw a picture for them, somehow, for some reason, I always end up drawing Mario.